What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the show. This is the Coachable Podcast where you get practical and actionable tips to apply to your life so that you can up-level spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Today, I want to talk about a really hot topic that every single one of you experiences probably on a day-to-day basis. So this is for everybody, and we're going to talk about triggers. So I think one of my skill sets is being able to identify when I am triggered or someone else is triggered, but really myself first. When I'm triggered, meaning I'm starting to get activated by something in my experience, whether something someone said, something someone did, noise that I heard, an email I received, anything of that nature that is upsetting to me in some way. And I have a long list of the things that trigger me personally, and they're all filtered through my own past experience. So the things that trigger us, the first thing I want to start by talking about is, why do we get triggered? Okay. Why do we get activated, upset, and sometimes react over emotionally, and we react in ways that we don't always like? And why do we do that? And how do we start to kind of take our power back from the trigger itself and be able to handle it in a way that feels more regulated, more calm, more centered? So think about something recently that has upset you or triggered you. And how did you respond? Did you handle it gracefully, or did you react in a way that maybe you're not super proud of? You lashed out. Maybe you withdrew. Maybe you became super passive aggressive. Maybe you got angry and yelled and said things that you don't mean or that you regretted later. We all have done this before. And I'm sure it doesn't take much to think about a circumstance in the recent past that's upset you. I can think of multiple. And over the years, I have improved my skill set and my practices around what do I do when I get triggered. So again, why do we do this? Why do we get activated? Well, it really has to do with our past experience. When we were young, from 0 to 7 years old, our brains are forming. They are completely malleable. They are sponges soaking up all of the information of the world. And really, this is how our brains are getting programmed when we were really young. This is when the time we're learning about who we are, about what happens in the world, if it's a safe place, if it's a dangerous place, if it's good or bad, right, wrong, all of these things are getting conditioned into us. And based on those early childhood experiences, we have things that have been deeply conditioned into our brains that might be painful experiences, might have been unwelcomed. Might be things that we don't want to go back and revisit or relive. And the things that we have that have traumatized us, that have hurt us, that have caused us so much pain and anguish over the years are things that you're like, I don't want to go deal with that again. And sometimes we think we have dealt with it, but our triggers are here to show us what we haven't dealt with. So I like to think of my triggers as essentially the GPS or the coordinates or the roadmap to my healing. Okay. So when I get triggered, I think of it as like a green flag instead of a red flag. Most of us are like, when I get triggered, what do? I leave. I leave every circumstance. If someone upsets me, I'm out. I'm going to remove myself from them. If it costs me my peace, it's too expensive, right? We give all of these reasons why you're not worth my time because you've upset me, you've triggered me, so peace out, I'm gone. Versus getting curious and taking this approach of curiosity and being like, why am I getting so activated? What is coming up in me right now that is wanting to be expressed or released or healed? So when I get triggered now, and this is a perspective that has taken me years to come to, but over the last several years of doing this work, I've realized triggers aren't a bad thing. They're not a red flag where I need to run away from them and hide in a corner and just, get rid of everyone in my life that ever triggers me at all, right? I would have no one around me. Instead, I choose to see them as the green flag and the indicator of like healing is available. Healing is here if I choose to respond to it in a certain way. Okay. So that's the first perspective shift I want you to take when it comes to resolving your triggers. Another thing that's important to understand is when you're triggered, what that another essentially means is you're dysregulated. This experience that has just happened, someone said something, somebody did something, you saw something, you came across a text message that upset you, right? Whatever it might have been. And this sends you into a stress response because it's likely reminding you of something from your past that was painful. It is bringing up a past memory and it feels very similar to something that was threatening from your past. Now, there's something in our brain called neuroception. This is part of polyvagal theory, and I'm not going to explain all of polyvagal theory today, but it's good to know. But in the back of our brainstem, we have something called neuroception. And this is our threat detector. It is at all hours of the day, 24/7, looking for threat. So right now, as you watch this podcast, you have neuroception happening, which is always scanning for three things: safety, danger, or life-threatening danger. Now, if a fire alarm went off in here right now, my neuroception would say, okay, Tori, it's time to get up. You need to leave. That could even trigger me if I in the past have been in a very dangerous situation and potentially a life-threatening situation. I could possibly go into shock. I could go into shutdown. I could get so triggered that I kind of freeze because it feels like a past experience if I had gone through an actual fire. So that neuroception in the back of your brain is constantly scanning all the time for threat, even if it's picking up on someone's facial expression, someone's tone of voice. If your boyfriend looked at their phone too long while you're sharing something vulnerable over conversation at dinner, all of a sudden your brainstem might be like, that reminds me of when dad never paid attention to mom when we were growing up and he was completely absent and thought she didn't have anything good to say. And he always was, cheating on her and da-da-da-da-da. So now all of a sudden, just because your boyfriend looked at his phone for a minute when you were sharing something in a conversation, you're experiencing that as a child who was experiencing the neglect of your father. And this is why we get triggered. We are something that happens is pressing on a wound that is unhealed. Essentially, if I have an open wound and someone comes and puts their finger in it, ow, I'm going to respond. I'm going to react. And that's what our triggers are. They're pressing on something that wants to be healed. But we think we are like dealing with our triggers surface level. We never get under the hood to really understand, what is this pressing on? What is this from my past that is still unhealed, that wants to come forward, that wants to be addressed, that wants to have breathing room and air to start to heal itself? So if we only go surface level, we're only going to heal at the surface level. And I promise you will continue to be triggered by the same types of things until you do the deeper work. So I want you to start to approach your triggers with curiosity, with open-mindedness, with almost like this investigator type mentality, like your Inspector Gadget, like become a child again and be like, okay, I'm an investigator. What's coming up for me right now? And let me kind of just take the clues of what is this reminding me of? What does this feel like? What is this bringing up in my body? What are those sensations? And what am I labeling that as? What's the story that I'm painting on top of what just happened? So let's take the example of your boyfriend who's maybe a little distracted in a conversation. And you're really wanting his full attention and he seems distracted. So he looks down at his phone. All of a sudden, you feel like this pit in your stomach, or your heart starts to race, or you start to sweat, or you start to get irritated. Well, So you feel that sensation and then you apply a meaning to it. You have now gone back into your childhood and applied a meaning and a narrative and a story on top of why you think he did that thing. And now you're in a movie essentially that is playing out before you based on the story that you're telling about why someone did or didn't do what they did. And the thing about being human is we all think we're right. That's the ego. We think we know exactly why people do things. We assume based on our experience. So it's like we're all looking through the world with a certain color glass. So rose colored glasses, yellow colored glasses, whatever color glasses you're wearing. I got some orange ones in my bag. So I'm looking at my circumstance through that color, and that color is based on my past experience. I'm actually not engaging with the truth. I'm not engaging with the reality of what's happening. I'm engaging with my past experience. And so actually in that moment, my inner child is who's showing up in this dynamic, not my adult self. And in those moments, this is why we start to react in ways sometimes we're not proud of, sometimes we don't like, and sometimes we don't even understand. How many times have we gotten triggered and then we're like, I don't know why I completely shut down and froze. I don't know why I can't find the words to express myself right now, but I can't. I am completely overwhelmed. I have so much to say. And at the same time, I don't have any words to say it with. What the heck, right? If you've ever felt like this, then first of all, you're human. Welcome to being human. You're not alone. And two, this is an indicator that you've gotten pretty dysregulated. Your nervous system is in a stressed response, and we need to come back to regulation. And we can do that with curiosity, and we can start to really get underneath that uncomfortable emotion and where it's really stemming from. Because if we can start to heal at the core level, at the wound level, at the root, then once we heal, then that thing that triggers you so bad doesn't affect you in the same way anymore, right? If you start to really work on that wound with your father where you felt really neglected or unimportant or dismissed, that work was most important to him and his family came second, and you never felt like you really had his attention ever. If you get to really work and heal that, then when your boyfriend looks at his phone because he gets a message in the middle of the dinner, you're not as triggered as much, right? It goes hand in hand. And here's the thing, we all need help with this. No one, unfortunately, most people don't know how to do this. This is not a class that you go through in school. You didn't miss that day of school, unfortunately, because it's not in the curriculum. If it was up to me, there would be a class on this. So if you're part of a school system, I will come in and teach this class. But this is what we need to learn. And this is what I want to help you with. So I have a PDF download that I would love for you to go get that really is essentially the roadmap to two things. You can dissect your trigger and understand exactly where it's coming from, why it's coming up, and how you're reacting. You can choose a new response and become aware of what it feels like when you are being triggered so that the next time it happens, you know, and you can choose a new response. It really takes you step by step through dissecting your trigger to get to the core of what's this wound really about. The second thing that this download is going to give you is a kind of a conversation that you could even use with someone that you wanted to have a difficult conversation with. If you actually wanted to share with your boyfriend how this thing made you feel, but you didn't really feel like you could have the words, you can take this download and actually fill in the blanks because it's written in conversation style where you can really understand exactly what's happening and how you can share it with somebody in a way that's not going to make them feel attacked, that's not going to make them feel like you're blaming them or shaming them for what they did. This is why so many people in relationships have conflict that goes unresolved or that just blows up from one small incident and then it becomes a massive problem. Because what we do is when we get triggered, what do? We start to blame. You did this. You made me feel this way. You're not paying attention to me, right? That means you don't care. You don't care to spend time with me, blah, 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 blah. And then what does our partner do? Or what does the other person do? They feel attacked and now they feel the need to defend themselves. Now you have two dysregulated people going at it, and that doesn't make any regulated conversation or healthy environment for healthy love. So if you go to torigordon.com/un-triggered, you can download the Untriggered workbook. And this is going to take you through a whole conversation step by step with fill in the blanks that you can fill out to help you dissect your triggers. This is such a great tool. Even if you don't use it with a person or a partner to have what I call a nice conflict, is really going to help you to understand what's at the root, what's at the core, what's really going on with this reaction that you're having. And we also know we're triggered when we're having a big emotional reaction that is not really equivalent to what actually occurred, right? So when something happens and you have a big emotional response, this is an indicator that you might be having an old wound being activated. So I don't want you to run away from your triggers. I don't want you to think you have to get rid of them. They're actually information. It's trying to inform you about where healing gets to begin, but you have to take ownership of that. It's so easy to blame everyone else for making you feel a certain way. It's so powerful when you start taking that into your own hands and becoming responsible for how you feel and how you want to feel. Because I promise you, you don't have to be a victim or a slave to your emotional roller coaster all the time. And if you feel that way, I know this PDF download will help. So go to torigordon.com/un-triggered. We'll put that in the show notes to make it super easy for you guys to go download it. I know this will help you and support you as you start to dissect your triggers and understand really what's at the core of your uncomfortable emotions. I hope this helps. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you next week on the Coachable Podcast.